Hello, and welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. I'm Alexie, and this is Adam, John, Avi.
Hello.
I'm going to get that one day. And today we're breaking down the film in Train to Busan. So if you check the description in the video, you'll find a PDF of Avi's tentpole beats, which are the most important moments in the screenplay. And Avi did a really great job with them. And in a minute, Avi is going to run us through the tentpole beats and do his initial analysis. And then we're going to open it up into a conversation with all of you. But first, a word from John.
Couldn't it be like a word from Adam or something?
No one needs words.
Actually, you know what, Alexie?
Am I staring at you, John?
It's frightening how these things spring to mind, but I do. I'm going back to Morgan Creek Warner Brothers. I think did we do an anecdote from there last week? That was when the producer Bill Todman. Yeah, I do have another one that I thought of the other day because I knew Alexie was how much she loves putting me on the spot with these stories, and I do. Alexie, one just popped in my head, so I'll here it is.
Perfect.
So what happened was I had finished the script. I had finished writing the script. And for Major League Back to the Minors, I finished writing the script, and they said, we love it, but we don't know if we're going to make it, whatever, da-da-da. And so I was kind of waiting, and they had said, we want you to direct it and all that, and I'm waiting, but nothing's happening. And then one day I get a call from Bill Todman, head of production, and he said, we got a green light. Can you get over here this afternoon? So I'm like, are you serious? And he goes, yeah, we're going. So I said, I'm on my way. So I go right over to the studio, and I said, what happened? And he said, Japan called. And I said, okay, well, God, that's just great. What does that mean? And he said, they want this movie because Japan, baseball is so big in Japan, and they want this movie, and they will help finance it, and they were going to throw in a big chunk of money. And so I said, so we're going? He said, we're going. We got the money. We got approval. We're greenlit. You're directing. We go into pre-production. Let me take you upstairs to your office. This is like a dream, So I go upstairs in my office, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, how did all this happen? He said, well, the caveat is they've got an actor who's a big star, TV star in Japan. His name's Taka Tanaka, I think. Yeah, I should know. Anyway, Taka. And he's great, and he wants to do it. So you've got to go back and write him into the movie. But I'm such a slut. I'll do anything to get my movie made. So I said, absolutely. Are you kidding? I'll do that. I can do that by tomorrow morning. I've written this new character in. So I do, and they said, yeah, get him in, and he's fluent in English, and it'll be great. So I do the rewrite. They look at it, they approve it, they love it. Japan sends the money. We're greenlit. We go to Charleston, South Carolina to shoot. Oh no, before that. So Taka's coming over to meet, and so one day, and Taka's here, he's coming into your office, and he's read the script. He loves it. Again, fluent in English. There won't be any problem. That's what this is. They don't. And he walks in with an entourage. He's got like 6 people with him. And I jump up and I walk over and shake hands. I said, it's so nice to meet you. And he just stares at me. And clearly, he doesn't have a clue as to what I just said. And all I said was, so nice to meet you. And he's just looking at me. And the man standing next to him said something to him in Japanese. And then the man standing next turns to me and says, he says, it's nice to meet you too. I said, did Taka, he didn't understand what I said? And he said, no. I said, I was told he was fluent in English. And he said, oh no, he doesn't speak or understand English. I said, well, that's not what I was doing. And they said, no, he doesn't. And phonically, he probably can't learn the script that way either. And we were shooting in 2 weeks' time. And it was just, I mean, talk about scrambling. We ended up doing subtitles and then English. It was but it's just one of those terrifying moments when
Oh my God.
talk about misinformation. And he never understood a word I said the whole shoot. He was a lovely guy, delightful guy. And he always traveled with like this posse of 6 people, 2 of which were translators who were always trying to explain to me what he meant, what I meant. It was just a nightmare. But anyway, as I said, you do anything. Well, if you're me, you do anything to get your movie made. The trials,
Wow.
stuff like that, huh?
Wow.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Jeez.
All the time. Yeah, it was just mind-boggling.
Did you find out what happened? Like, was it an intentional?
Yeah, they lied to me.
It was intentional. Yeah.
Yeah. They said, John will figure it out. It's on his shoulders. He's the director. Screw him. Isn't that great?
That's a recurring theme in your life, isn't it?
Yeah. Screw him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes for good stories, though, doesn't it? I
Oh,
think. Anyway, so that's that.
That's a good story, John.
Thank you.
See how you have stories? Just need a little pressure.
Yeah, and we know where that comes from. Okay.
It just popped into your head.
Yeah, it did.
Scraped in the barrel.
Thank you for not saying the bottom of the barrel. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Train to
So,
Busan.
Train to
better
Busan.
story.
Let's talk
Avi, you
about
ready
that.
to do this? Ready to do
I
this?
am, and I'm just going to preface it with I did everything that I can to protect my internet this time so that I don't drop out. It's probably going to happen anyway. If that does, I'll see what I can do to fix it. But otherwise, I'm just going to do my best.
Okay.
Do your best.
It'll be fine.
Great.
It'll be fine.
All right. Cool. So, Train to Busan. I'll just preface by saying that zombie movies are one of my favorite subgenres, and because they are so easy to make, because all you really need are a nice group of extras that you can, slather with makeup and fake blood and have shuffle around. There are a lot of bad ones, but the really good ones are something special. They don't just go for the visceral thrill, although they can do that really well, but they try to use zombies as a metaphor for various things. Like the Night of the Living Dead, it dealt with racism. Dawn of the Dead dealt with consumerism. Train to Busan deals a bit with class and with concepts of selfishness in society versus selflessness. And I personally think that this movie is a masterclass in structure and in how to craft obstacles and in how to use obstacles to help your character through their arc. So let me talk through what the story is about. You've all seen it, so I won't get into too much detail, but I probably will anyway because I love this movie. So our protagonist is Suk-woo. He is a divorced fund manager who is, he's inattentive to his daughter, Suan, who I think structurally is his mentor. He's a very selfish person. He sees his job as focusing on his own needs and the needs of those who matter to him directly, and doesn't think about the needs of others as much. And he doesn't understand why he has such a hard time connecting with his daughter, because he doesn't quite understand that this is his flaw. His inner need is to learn to value the needs of others. And this is a thematic question that runs throughout the entire film, because as you'll see, there are characters who will believe that the best policy is helping others. And there are those who believe in this film that the best policy is only helping yourself, come what may. And, in the process, they succeed or they fail in various ways. And the question remains open until essentially the ending. So Suk-woo is going to take his daughter, Suan, to Busan for her birthday. Busan is where her mother lives. And he just assumes that he'll take her there on the train and drop her off and get back to work and not have to worry about this anymore. And then the inciting incident happens, which we've seen from the prologue has already kind of been in motion, but a zombie apocalypse is spreading through Korea. And once Suk-woo and Suan are on the train, right before it rolls out, somebody who is infected gets onto the train, and now there are zombies on the outside of the train and on the inside of the train, which, of course, throws the characters into their new world, out of their normal world. So the initial response is shock. And Suk-woo's initial response is to just focus on protecting himself and his daughter, which puts him at odds with other characters, which we'll get to in a bit. But essentially, the call to action, the first act break, is the world is gone. You cannot go back home. Even, Suk-woo's mother, who's back home, we hear on the phone, turns into a zombie. There's literally no more home. You cannot return to the normal world. All you can do is go forward and survive. So the objective is get to Busan alive and protect Suwon. So now we're in Act 2. The new world is that there are zombies everywhere. There's a military outpost at Daejeon Station. And by the way, I'm going to mention the characters in this film are all Korean, and I'm probably going to mistake certain names here and there. And I apologize in advance for that, but I'll do my best. But essentially, there's a station, Daejeon Station, that might be safe for our protagonist and his daughter and everybody else on the train. The antagonists of this movie, I think, is an interesting thing to discuss, because on one hand, there are the zombies, who are the very obvious in-your-face antagonists. They're everywhere. If you get bitten by one, you turn into one. That's the worst thing that could possibly happen. Otherwise, they'll just rip you apart. And they are driven by one singular goal, which is just kill and infect. So they're an incredibly direct antagonist. The same time, what zombie movies tend to do, the socially minded ones at least, like most of the George Romero ones, is introduce human antagonists as well. Because in these movies, it's not just about how humans deal with outsized pressures and how they just fight back against an external force. Often the main conflict of the film is interpersonal as well. Because usually there's some thematic point to be made about how we are our own worst enemies, and generally speaking, in stories like this, cooperation is the way forward, and characters who just focus on self-preservation tend to mess that up. And so we have a character named Yeon-suk, who is a businessman. He's a COO of a company. He is classist. He looks down upon people who are less rich than he is. And he will always put his own safety above everybody else's safety. If there is a zombie between him and where he needs to go, he will throw another survivor in the path of that zombie to distract that zombie while he runs away. That's the kind of person he is. And he causes all sorts of problems for our heroes. And Suk-woo and Suwon make some notable friends. There's the tough guy and skilled fighter Sang-hwa, who at first really dislikes Suk-woo, and because Suk-woo at first is willing to sacrifice Sang-hwa and Sang-hwa's pregnant wife, Sun-kyung. So they're at odds for a bit, but they do eventually, fall in line with each other and learn from each other. And Suk-woo learns some selflessness from Sang-hwa. So you could say that Sang-hwa kind of becomes a mentor. And then there's a full ensemble on this train, because it's a full train. And I think something that they do really well in this movie is make sure that it's not just the hero you care about and stock red shirts who are, who just exist to get eaten by zombies. They make sure to turn a number of these characters into actual characters you care about. So there's the baseball player, Young-guk, played by one of the leads from Parasite, who, will be made 4 years after this film. There's his friend Jin-hee. There's the elderly sisters In-gil and Jong-gil. And there's the train's conductor, who is quite heroic. And there's a homeless man who stumbled aboard the train right before it all, everything went bad, who is generally feared by people or looked down upon by people, but is very helpful and selfless. As for enemies, there's Yeon-suk, as mentioned. There are the people who are afraid and, easily swayed to Yeon-suk's side when the train eventually is at odds with itself. And there's a train attendant who frequently sides with Yeon-suk. So anyway, trying to get to Daejeon Station, they arrive at the station. They get obstacles upon obstacles. It turns out it's not a safe haven. The military has been turned into zombies. Various characters that we've come to know get killed or get separated. And the midpoint shift of this movie is our characters are no longer just sort of on a train waiting to get dropped off for safety. The safe station is gone, and our characters are separated aboard the train. Because once they've gone back on, they got back on different cars. So you have Yeon-suk and most of the survivors towards the front of the train. You have Seok-woo, Soo-won, Sang-won, his pregnant wife, a few cars back. And then you have Soo-won, the young daughter, the stakes character of this movie, with the pregnant wife, Sun Kwang, who are in the back with a couple of other characters we've come to know. So there's this sort of new objective, in a sense, mini objective, because the main objective is the same: get to safety at the end of the train, at the end of the tracks. But now Seok-woo can no longer sit back and wait for things to work out and kind of passively or actively react to things. He has to take action. He has to fight through cars full of zombies to save his daughter and to save Sang-hwa's pregnant wife. And that leads it leads to obstacles. It leads to deaths. We lose Sang-hwa, who is an incredibly helpful character. He's a skilled fighter. He's been helping our heroes fight the zombies, but now he's gone. We've lost a mentor figure. In-gil gets killed. And when Seok-woo and Soo-won and Sung-kyung return towards the front of the train, Yeon-suk has turned the rest of the train against them. They don't trust that these people are safe to admit onto the train that might be infected. So our small group of heroes, our diminished group of heroes, gets banished to the vestibule. And I think that this counts as an ultimate test, because even though it is not our protagonist necessarily reckoning with his flaw or sort of falling prey to his flaw in order to achieve what he wants, it is sort of a reckoning for the theme. Because if the theme is it better to help yourself or to help others, here's a scene where the others have turned on them and are essentially banishing them. And as a result, most of the survivors die. And there are no more safe cars aboard the train except for this vestibule. There are very few people left on this train who can help each other. And in this sort of all is lost moment, which is compounded by the fact that Seok-woo learns that his company might have actually been involved in the creation of this apocalypse, and he has literal blood on his hands, which they like to show us very close up and very dramatically. The train has to stop because the tracks are obstructed. And our characters are going to have to actually get off the train into the zombie-infested world in order to get onto another train to get themselves to safety. And they actually have to essentially jump right into the fire, so to speak. So all or nothing. Seok-woo must get his daughter and the others to another train at the train yard to get to safety. Obstacles and consequent deaths ensue. And I'm just going to say for a second, the way this movie uses obstacles isn't just to create chores for the characters. It's not just so that once they get to the other side, they say, well, I did it, but it wasn't easy. Each obstacle forces characters to make choices, and those choices have consequences that are lasting. And, as a result, characters die, status quos change. You can never go back from any given obstacle. You can't return to the way things were before that obstacle, which, intensely raises the stakes each time, but also keeps the story moving instead of just kind of treadmilling. And I think it's a great lesson to take from it. So we lose all sorts of characters until eventually all you have left are Seok-woo, his daughter, and Sung-kyung. And the final fight, they get aboard this, just this bare train engine that doesn't even have cars behind it. And Seok-woo has to fight Yeon-suk, who has become a zombie. And Seok-woo has, he defeats Yeon-suk, but he gets bitten and he's infected. And he corrects his flaw in this moment because he very selflessly sacrifices himself so that his daughter can live. The final scenes of the movie has Soo-won and Sung-kyung being rescued by soldiers. And in this really beautiful final moment, the reason why they are saved and not presumed to be zombies and killed is because Soo-won sings a song which has been set up throughout the movie as a song that she had wanted to sing for her father, but her father was never around, and she was never able to sing that song for him while he's not around. And now at the end, he's dead, but he has proven himself to her. And so he is there for her now. He's corrected his flaw, and she's able to sing the song, and they are saved because of it. And that is Train to Busan. How'd I do, guys?
That was fantastic.
That was great.
Fantastic. That was
Let's
fantastic.
see. How do I add everyone?
Great job.
There we
You're
go.
Great
Did I ever drop
Wow.
out?
Yay! There was like a few. There was 2 places, but it
it
wasn't
was
that
for a
bad.
second.
Okay.
It wasn't that bad.
95% of it was
But
I know.
great
Fabulous.
job.
Okay, I'll take 95.
And you've turned me. You may have turned me into a zombie movie fan.
I was impressed by how
admit-
emotional
Did you
that
cry?
was.
Did you
I
weep?
cried.
Did you weep?
I
Alexia?
cried a little bit.
Alexie doesn't cry. You
I
know this
don't.
story.
I don't cry.
Yeah, I cried.
Yeah.
First of all, I watched that
cried.
first thing this morning.
That's not special.
So like I was in a very delicate, I haven't had my caffeine mood. And at the end, at the tunnel with the crosshair, I was like, and she sings the song, I was like feeling it. It was coming.
Yeah, there's a study that if you watch movies on airplanes, you're more likely to feel emotional at the end of them.
Why is that?
They hypothesize
Why?
it's because you've gone through a lot of stress to get onto that plane. There's the packing, there's traveling, there's going.
So you're vulnerable?
Oh.
Everything worked out.
Well, Avi, you did a great job. You did a great job, and I've got a couple questions, but I do think I love the film. I mean, and structurally, you're right. It is so sound. It is so it's so smart. There's a moment, and I'm not going to try these names, but so just bear with me. But the father, the dad, there's a moment when he closes the door on the martial arts guy and his pregnant wife, right? In early act 2. It's a great moment. It's a great moment. I'll ask you or ask everybody. I do think that his flaw is so on the nose. I mean, I feel like they could have been more subtle. I mean, the daughter says, I wrote it down. I don't know where it is, but I mean, she tells him up front, that he's just, you've got to think about other people. He does. Oh, yeah. Page 33. You only watch out for yourself. There could have been, and is that
Wait,
is
did you
that
get the
zombie?
script,
Is that
John?
horror film? Huh?
You got the script?
No. I timed the movie when I watched it.
Oh, I thought you said page 33. I'm like, John, how?
Minute 33. Minute 33. Yeah.
I tried so hard.
He transcribed it from memory all at once,
Yeah. But Avi, is that inherent to horror films, that they're a little less than subtle?
It kind of depends, because there are subtle horror movies, there are subtle zombie movies, but I feel like the tone they were going for with this movie was kind of on the cartoonier side. This director comes from an animation background, and actually he has an animated companion film to this film that is also very worth seeking out. So part of me wonders if the unsubtlety is just because we are sort of exaggerating the story that we are telling to get to these things. You're blowing up the stakes incredibly. It is a heightened reality, and I feel like with that come sort of heightened thematics. Part of me also wonders if there's any possibility that it's in translation. That if we were, if we understood Korean and didn't have to kind of get it from subtitles, because it is literally spelled out for us. We are watching characters. It is literally a translation of phrases in ways that we can understand, and so that might potentially dumb it down slightly. But also, it could just be it's a live action animated film to a degree. So there is that. But the whole point of zombies generally is to be an outsized metaphor for something. It's a magnifying glass, so things look bigger.
I was asking some people what they all think his flaw was and if they think it was too on the nose. And people agree that it was really on the nose, but
I liked it.
I like it.
I didn't think
I like how blatant it was.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was endemic to this genre.
Well, I'll tell you why I like it in this movie, because it could have.
Mommy left you.
It could have been really cringy. It could have been almost a tacked on arc. But what this movie does, and like what you pointed out with closing the door, the way characters demonstrate where they are with regards to their flaw is always through action and through choices. It is through what they do. And so even if characters talk about it, it is demonstrated and it matters, as opposed to a story where you have a bunch of characters kind of doing the same thing, and every so often somebody says to one of them, "You're a selfish one," and then at the end, actually you're okay. It's like, no, we see his evolution through what he does and the consequences of those actions throughout. So that's why it works for me. It just also has characters saying it. But again, the character who says it there is a 10-year-old girl. So, that does potentially kind of reduce the complexity of how you would say it.
She was very good too, but
God, she's wonderful.
She stressed me out.
The acting across the board was fantastic, and I think it was one of the reasons why they got away with some of those lines. Is the father's performance was always like grounded in like he felt like a real guy. Not like like he didn't feel like an actor playing it. Like he felt like a shitty hedge fund manager who was trying to connect with his daughter. That's who he was. Like the performance is great. Yeah.
And Adam had said when we talked about this, when we said this was the film to watch this week, Adam, I think you said that I would like it because anything that's introduced pays off, and the two older women on the train, I was looking for it. I mean, in a good way, and it's just. By the way, this I know I do this all the time, but this is why you craft a beat sheet, because those two elderly women are probably in the film 6 times, but the way that they are spaced is and the baseball players and the same thing all through the film. It just is structurally so sound, so much fun.
Yeah, every element that's introduced pays off.
Yeah. Something I really appreciate. Oh yeah.
I was gonna say. I was saying that I wondered how many times though that COO was gonna get away with pretending to help someone, then throwing the person at them, because that happened a little much. I will say
it happened.
He had an MO.
Well, that one beat. I think happens once where he's like, "Oh, the coast is clear." There are just other beats where he's just flailing around in the background, runs in, grabs a person, throws them, and just keeps running.
Yeah.
He's such a despicable character. There's a long tradition in zombie movies of just a despicable human character who just messes up for everybody.
So Nina says, was it really necessary at all that the father's company was responsible?
I'm not entirely sure it was. I don't really think it was. I like it in the sense that it has, the fellow on the phone asks, "Is this our fault?" And our hero says no to comfort him. Like, I like that beat. It's not necessary. We could have had a movie without that.
Something I really, really enjoyed about the character development and the arc with the daughter. So when he's talking to her at the end, and he's talking about where he's in the car and he says, you might not think I'm always watching, but I'm always watching. And she says to him, that's why she couldn't sing, is that she didn't see him watching for her. She didn't see him in the crowd. Right. And at the end, she's singing because she knows he's watching for her. She's holding on to the belief that my dad's watching out for me, even though they're in the that was really good shit.
Yeah, that was, but that line really pissed me off when he said that, though. When he said it at first, I was just like, "You tool!"
Well, he is a tool.
He is a tool. He is a tool.
Yeah, I know. I was like, "That's terrible."
By the way, if he's not a tool, he's got nowhere to go.
That's true.
Yeah, that's.
But I love that beat where Sangwa says to Suan, like, "So your dad's a fund manager. Yeah. Oh, so he's a bloodsucker, right?" And his wife says, "Oh, don't say that." She says, "It's okay. We were all thinking it."
Yeah, I love that beat. By the way, Avi, you hit on this, but I just want to say it again: is that he makes the ultimate sacrifice, and that's the resolution, and that is really well done.
Well,
his so well directed.
I mean, his need is to be selfless, and there's nothing more selfless than self-sacrifice. So. It works here. That kind of self-sacrifice might not be appropriate in a different movie with a different flaw, but here, because it's all about the ultimately the movie kind of lands on, it could backfire, but it's important to help others. It was important for them to do that here.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of this philosophy class that I sat in on for freshman year. I just went to a philosophy class. I don't know why. And there was this whole argument that it's not selfless if it's protecting your own genes, which is interesting. Like that if you're trying to further your own like biology, then it's not selfless, it's selfish. So that
True.
but I mean that was not the case in the world of the story. But I'm just saying.
But hey, the daughter was not the only one left that he was saving, that he was risking himself for.
That's true. That's okay. So the pregnant lady
and he
makes
tries
him
to
good.
help, and he tries to help other people through, like poor Sang-hwa, this just amazing fighter who's just like able to like punch zombies to the ceiling.
So for this, I think to be respected by his daughter, he has to be selfless, because that's her mark of are you a good person or not. Like that's like the line when she has the interaction with the COO in the beginning is sort of like, Mom told me the people who say that are bad people.
Oh, I want to meet that mom. She sounds great.
She's dead, unfortunately.
Oh, wait, is she? Is that what it was? I thought it was just that the connection was gone.
There's no way she's not dead.
Oh,
no way she's not dead.
But how great is that line, though? I mean,
That's great.
They love the idea of focusing on self societally and not just individually. Did I jump out for a second? Okay, so this movie loves the idea of selflessness and selfishness on a societal level, and so they've created the society on this train so that it's not just one-on-one, but it's so like the idea of honing in on this COO is a terrible person because he looks down on people who are less rich than he is. It's like, okay, so that's the kind of selfishness, selflessness that we're looking at, like ranking people, and that's something that happens in zombie movies a lot. The idea of who do we prioritize? Even if when it gets beyond yourself, who do you prioritize? Do you have a list of people who you would save versus other people who you maybe, think twice about? And this movie goes there pretty significantly.
Is it?
I've got a question.
Is it? I was just thinking about, so is it like in the beginning, the buff guy thinks that the dad is going to fall into the same camp as the COO, kind of, right? And then he has to choose which side he's gonna, if he's gonna be that guy or he's not. It's just something I thought about.
Oh, 100%. And there's that moment where, Sang-hwa is, he has an opportunity to close the door on Seok-woo, just like Seok-woo closed it on him, and he doesn't.
Right. Yeah, and he doesn't. Yeah, and that's a fantastic beat. That's a fantastic.
Yeah, someone brought that up.
I've got to.
Go ahead.
What?
I was just saying, someone brought that up before, but that was one of their favorite moments, was that mirror.
It's a great beat, because we're waiting. I mean, I was waiting to see, will he or won't he?
Yeah.
I've got a question about the world building, which I think is really well done. And students have, all writers have a difficulty with the world building. The world building for me is really locked down and really well done. But it's so simple. And Avi, I'm asking you, because maybe I missed something, but if they bite you, you become a zombie, or they just eat you. Also, they can, and I think but they cannot open doors.
So something, okay.
I mean, that's like beautiful. I mean,
Isn't it like an Alien movie does that too? What movie is that? There's some like movie with an alien where the aliens can't open the doors. Adam, you muted yourself.
Oh, but
Adam, you're muted.
All right. Also, if they can't see you, you don't exist to them.
Right. Well, they are very...
That's right. That's the other. Yeah. But Adam, the world building is so simple, isn't it? It's just like 4 or 5 pieces.
Well, I think it's actually worthwhile.
And you get them.
I think it's worthwhile actually getting into a little history lesson here, because this is, it is, these rules, most of these rules are existing conventions. 1968, George Romero makes Night of the Living Dead, which introduces the idea of they are dead people, they shuffle after you, if they bite you, you become like them, and they want to eat you, and they're not very bright, they're just automatons, basically. And that movie accidentally fell into the public domain. They failed to copyright it, and suddenly there's a boom.
Really?
Yeah. It was really tragic for them, but it was really fortunate for the rest of us, because it led to just a bajillion.
Boy, that was
imitators.
selfish. He's not selfless. What? Go ahead.
It led to a bajillion imitators, and suddenly you have waves and waves and waves of movies that follow those rules that were established in that one movie. And then people started kind of elaborating on them. Like in the early 2000s, you get the idea of what if these, infected people who are mindless and chasing you, what if they were fast? How much scarier would that be? What if instead of taking like a day to turn, it took seconds? Like, so these things started happening in movies like 28 Days Later, the Dawn of the Dead remake, even more recently the World War Z movie, which completely disregards the book in which they're slow. Like there's a visual in World War Z that pops up in this film of the zombies kind of piling on top of each other like ants. Like that comes from that. So I think that the makers of Train to Busan understand that audiences know these rules and have seen them before. So what's important for them isn't to say, here's what a zombie is. It's here are the rules that we are playing by. It's like, okay, you get bit, you change. Okay, we see that happening. This person was just bit and immediately changes. Okay, we're doing fast. And then like, what rules are we inventing? It's like, if they don't see you, then they stop acting up. Okay, so we have to introduce that because that's not a given. The idea that they can't open a door. Sometimes in other films they can. So it's important for them to say, in our movie they can't. So it's just saying, we are playing genre, but we have our own ways of doing it too.
The thing about the bites, though, the thing about the biting drove me nuts, though, because that wasn't consistent. Because like some people got bit, then immediately turned around and mauled other people, whereas in the end, the COO freaking just was chilling out there, going and like turning into a zombie.
So one thing that's sort of a convention is when because they're undead, if you die, that's what triggers the turn. So if somebody's bitten on the neck and they bleed out right then and there, then they turn right then and there. But if it's like on the hand or on the ankle, then it takes longer. And so that they had a shot. So they had a shot early on of that woman who sort of sneaks aboard the train, and we see the veins kind of blackening up her leg. And then immediately after that, she bites somebody on the neck, and that person changes immediately. So it was important for them to say that where they're bitten matters, but they also kind of assume that you've seen these movies and know that that's a rule.
I assumed it was how close the bite was to your brain. So if it's your neck, the faster it infects your brain.
Oh,
if it's your leg or your hand, it takes longer.
Wow.
I just was
for the
like,
dad, it was the hand, right? So
yeah,
right. That could work. And something this movie doesn't do, which surprised me, is the main thing about zombies in most movies is the only way to kill them is to shoot them in the head. And in this movie, they show that they're certainly very hardy, like they can take all sorts of abuse. But there are no headshots or decapitations or anything like that within this film. So you could come out of it at the end of it not knowing this rule. And I think that's an interesting thing because it is one of my favorite zombie movies. It's in my top 5 at least. And they just don't go to that one area that is sort of assumed in other movies. And I've
not
noticed
a single gunshot in the entire movie.
A single gunshot, not a single destruction of head, which I can't imagine a zombie movie avoiding that. So that's kind of surprising to me.
I feel like if this was an American movie, they would have had like some like ex-military guy also on the train who was just like,
if they ever remake this, and there are talks of a remake in America,
he would be a military man with like a bunch of weapons.
Yeah,
he'd
be Tom Hardy.
The
interesting thing about South Korea is that everybody served in the military.
It's like Israel. It's compulsory.
I've got a question. It's probably pretty naive, but I have to ask anyway. I was surprised that it was the entire film happens in daytime, daylight. I was shocked by that. I kept waiting for them to go into night to up the conflict and the stakes. And is that unusual for a horror film that it's all in the broad daylight? And by the way, very bright.
Very bright. There are the famous zombie trilogy that sort of kicked off the trend was Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. So I hope that answers that.
Also, the rules of this world, it would have been safer at night.
Yeah.
Because the zombies, the more light they have, the more they can see you. So when they shut off the lights in the tunnels, that was the safest they were.
Damn cataracts.
That's what I was trying to figure out. I thought that at some point they were going to say we should wait in this train car until night and then go, but they I think it was probably for the best that they didn't slow it down like that.
Yeah, and the train would have had to stop anyway.
What was the midpoint?
I think the midpoint is when they get back on the train after that failed station attempt, and they're all separated.
Mm.
And they're like, "Oh my God, we have to go meet our people."
Because for the
That
first
makes
half, it's just avoid zombies, and the second half you have to confront them.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad that we did the horror film. And now, I mean, again, so Day of the Dead, what are the three?
So Night of the Living Dead.
You're gonna be a horror guy now?
And
I might be.
John, Night of the Living Dead, it has some sort of, themes of, humans being our own worst enemies. It accidentally became an allegory for race, because the lead character in that movie, they cast a black actor who is at odds with a white man who is condescending to him. And it was released right after the assassination of Martin Luther King. And so it had all of these additional social elements that were kind of introduced to it kind of after the fact. And George Romero took that to heart. So Dawn of the Dead is very on the nose. This is about consumerism. It's he made it 10 years after the fact, and it's people holding up in a mall and sort of falling prey to sort of wanting to defend their creature comforts in the mall.
Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and...
Oh, we lost you for a sec, Avi.
Night of the Living... Okay, I'm back. So Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and then Day of the Dead is an underground bunker full of scientists and soldiers, and the scientists hate the soldiers, and the soldiers hate the scientists, and it's very mindful societally, basically, and it was very, very, very intentional, very on the nose, especially in that movie. But it's a classic, and it's worth checking out. And then you have movies that are these sort of modern masterpieces that deal with zombies, like, I don't know if you're familiar with 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later is a beautiful movie. Shaun of the Dead is so much fun. Shaun of the Dead is
Shaun of the Dead.
Adam, you've talked me into that. I just need to do it one of these days.
Oh, it's such
Shaun of the Dead is a romantic comedy that is also a zombie movie.
That's so good. That's so good. I've seen Zombieland,
which I appreciate.
Zombieland is also very fun. It's a robust genre. There's a lot.
I asked, and we're seeing if they roll in. Let's see. I will
say my favorite part of the movie was when they're running back down the stairs to the train, and those zombies burst out of the window above and fall onto the train. And some of that was the first moment you see them all glomping together.
Oh yeah.
And seeing them break their bones on the ground and still keep going.
Helicopters didn't really make sense to me, though. That was something that didn't make sense. I was like, how are these zombies getting helicoptered in?
No. That was obviously
they were dangling from the helicopter. They were trying to get onto the helicopter when it was taking off, and so a few of them were dangling.
The pilots were pilots who were trying to escape.
By the way, how perfect is it that you have that moment where the prime minister is saying, there's nothing to worry about. There's no danger to your life.
That was triggering.
Oh my God. I mean,
that was really triggering.
Yeah.
We don't have any reason to believe that you are in danger right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a
sequel just came out.
I've got a question for everybody in the audience, because this genre, which again I really, really enjoyed, and I've been thinking about a genre that is not well known, I think, and it's been a while since we've seen it. Does anybody know the film Bringing Up Baby?
I would have loved if I knew it. That would have been such a plot twist.
I'm not actually.
Yeah, I would have fallen off his chair, but yeah.
I've heard of it.
Adam, I'm kind of surprised you don't know Bringing Up Baby.
I've never seen it. I know.
Does anybody know Bringing Up? Oh, then that's
Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant.
Yeah,
1938.
Then that's what we're gonna, because it's the genre is madcap, and it's a. We've got to do it. We've got to do Bringing Up Baby, because it's just bizarre, but it's.
I tried to Google it. And it's Madcap Coffee is coming up, so I don't know what that means.
Okay. Anyway, I was curious, but it's interesting that nobody knows it.
We do have people who have seen it.
Oh, wait, Paul. Oh,
Paul, Monica, Anthony.
Do you guys like it? Paul, Monica, do you guys like it?
Yeah, Anthony. Let's see. We'll wait
put
until
it on the list, I think. Okay.
We can add it to our upcoming list.
I think we've
got
to.
By the way, there's a wonderful recent zombie movie called The Girl with All the Gifts. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. But it's about a certain amount of years after the zombies have essentially taken over. And there's an underground military base where they are raising these children who were fetuses when their mothers turned into zombies. And now they're these sort of like feral, like these, like they seem like normal children, but if they smell blood, they become like zombies. And they are treated like they're less than human. And it becomes thematically about empathy and do you see the other?
What's that one called?
It's called The Girl with All the Gifts, and it has one of my favorite endings. It's a zombie movie, and it has one of my favorite endings of any zombie movie. But I just wanted to bring it up because it is a genre that lends itself so well to thematic questions and overt thematic questions. Because zombies are a blank slate; they can represent whatever you want them to represent, and they put your characters under pressure and force them to reveal who they are. So they are classically used to. I
love that.
Bring out the ugliness
inside people. Nerd. You're Avi. I mean that as a compliment. But it's by the.
Wow, you did it! You went there. The zombie.
It's just death. But I will say the zombie genre. The zombie genre is the only one that reliably, if the movie is good, it is the only genre that reliably nightmares.
It will give you nightmares.
Wouldn't it be great if somebody came out of the background and bit Avi on the neck right now?
That'd be intense.
That'd be great.
John,
then we could turn this into a movie. What?
John, my portfolio movie that got me into NYU is a short zombie movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't on your submission committee, but I would have given you a thumbs up.
Man.
Yeah.
That's
Have
interesting.
anybody done a noir zombie film?
Noir zombie film.
Wait a minute.
Where the zombie is like noir?
Wait a minute. Adam's onto something, huh?
John's into it. John's about it.
Noir zombie film.
I gotta say, the answer is probably. The answer is probably. I just have to think about which one it is.
But Adam, you shoot it in black and white.
Night of the Living Dead is black and white.
Is the zombie like the detective? Is that the noir person, or is it
like the Big Sleep or multi?
No, like a zombie apocalypse movie that's really a detective noir story.
I will say,
Adam, you're onto something. That's great.
Man, you've inspired John. I can see it turning.
You can hear the wheels, and they're rusty.
Come to think of it, the early draft of the screenplay for World War Z, which was closer to the novel than the movie ended up being, because the novel is a retrospective. The zombie apocalypse has ended, and here's just a list of interviews with people talking about what they did during it. And the original screenplay for World War Z, which ended up just becoming a Brad Pitt actioner, is about essentially a United Nations journalist who's trying to piece together what happened that caused the zombie apocalypse. And there are people who don't want him to know. So it does kind of get noirish in that script. And then they decided it would be much more marketable to have Brad Pitt fighting zombies and etc.
I wonder if you could rip off Chinatown and turn it into a...
John's really into this.
Totally.
I am a little bit in.
And the twist at the end is incest, zombie incest.
Oh my god!
Good lord!
My sister, my sister, my mother. Do we have any questions?
Let's see.
Adam loved that little.
Well, Carl asked what movie. Carl asked what zombie theme movie would the four of us make together. Something bone.
Well, yeah, I'm in.
We have
something bone.
Yeah.
Winter's Bite.
Winter's Bite. That's kind of noir-y.
We'll get her the script.
Yeah, that's kind of. That's got some noir vibes.
Wait. Winter's Moan.
You're losing me. You're losing me.
It might be a porn. I think that's a porn film.
Oh my god.
I had to say it. Somebody, you guys were all thinking it. I just said it.
John goes there.
Which is, by the way, frequently the case in here.
I have to say that zombies don't scare me at all. Like
I wasn't terribly scared. No.
Blood, zombies, that stuff doesn't scare me. What scares me? Ghosts.
Yeah, I don't F with ghosts. I don't F with demons. I don't do it. I don't watch it. I don't do it.
Demons don't bother me. It's like
nope.
The moment it's like like what was the Netflix series, Haunting House on the Hill or whatever. That I couldn't handle it. Like I was shaking and watching that. And like there was nothing really happening on camera. Like it was just like some like little ghosts in the background, little faces. You know, absolutely I couldn't handle it. That shit bothered me.
Do you know why zombies give me nightmares?
Why do zombies give you nightmares?
Because it's people you know and they are trying to kill you.
Oh, that's fair. That's interesting.
Single-mindedly, without any sort of rationale. People you know, faces you recognize, are no longer those people and they're trying to kill you. I've had cold sweat nights because of that. It's not necessarily the movie themselves. It's not necessarily the movies themselves that get me like, but there's something primal about that fear. And it's why Invasion of the Body Snatchers is so effective.
I don't know. When I see them,
having
like
people you know who wanted to kill you was normal. It's not normal.
I don't know.
John,
it's like when the baseball player guy like saw his friend, I had no sympathy. I'm like, what are you doing? Kill him dead. Like I had no like
kill him dead.
I'm just gonna say that if you don't. I'm just gonna say that if you don't cry at the end of this movie, you're not human.
Are you turning in my direction? Is that what just happened?
Why did you? Yeah, he was. I get it.
I'm impressed that you got the direction right. I can't do it.
You're not human.
Questions and comments. Questions, comments. Yeah.
What do we got?
People are talking about which movies gave them nightmares, like Hill House.
Wow.
Hill House is one of the best in a while. Oh, here we go. Andile. This was a throwback. I don't think anyone was thinking that, John.
Thank you so much. By the way, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support.
Oh man, and then Kaylin brought back this with Sean. I don't know if you remember it, but people love this from the feature course. Friends, if they don't serve your purpose, kill them. That's what you said in the course, and people loved it.
And by the way, I stand by it.
Monica Stegos has a question that I have an answer for.
What's the
time 449.
Okay, I'll pull it up.
Is that 449 as in 449 questions?
No, it's a timestamp. So, Avi, is there a book that gives you an overview of the zombie film tropes?
So there are so many books about zombie movies and the rules of zombie movies and the history of zombie movies. There's a book called The Zombie Survival Guide. It is written by the guy who wrote World War Z before he wrote World War Z, and he treats it very serious. It's a very specific set of old school George Romero Night of the Living Dead rules and how to handle yourself in a situation where that's the world you're thrust into. And it plays it completely straight. It's actually kind of useful for a pandemic.
What's it called?
The Zombie Survival Guide. I'm
going to pull up a link for people.
That is funny.
It's very good.
You know, there's this book that I really like that's kind of related to that, I mean, it's not zombies, but it's like the Time Traveler's Guide to and it's about how to invent anything or how to invent everything, I think is what it's called. And the whole setup of it is that this is the book that would go inside of the for funsies time traveling like vacationer's car in case they get stranded in a different time. And so they're like, okay, so you're stuck in time, you're screwed. Here's how you invent everything. And so it's like, it's all this like real stuff. So they really tell you how to do like crops and how to like invent everything, like music, all of it. But it's positioned as like the book that would be inside of your recreational time traveling car. And it is very fun. I would highly recommend.
Very fun. Love the sound of that.
Are typically these films are relatively inexpensive to make? Is that correct?
Yeah, they tend to be. Like Night of the Living Dead was a real indie. 28 Days Later, which I still think is it's Danny Boyle. It's sort of what kicked him off.
Right.
It was shot on DV tape. It's not even HD. And it was done on a relatively low budget. It's easy enough to do because you just need people. You just need people you can mess up, and you can set it in a house. I will say, in high school, I spent a year making a zombie movie in my high school on weekends for no money and just with friends, no crew. It's on YouTube. It's 70 minutes long.
What's the name? What's the title?
It's called Surviving Evidence, and that's if you want to see what a teenager does in his school on weekends when he's obsessed with movies and zombies. It's a found footage movie, which also makes it cheaper.
Oh, funny. God.
Oh,
that's
found footage.
I
That's
didn't know
smart.
that. Yeah, that's really smart.
It's out there. Do we got
Yeah.
Okay.
questions?
So we
Yeah.
did have someone ask. I'm trying to find it. They asked me if I would still feel that way if it was my friends who were zombies. Yeah, kill them dead.
Kill 'em dead. I love it.
Wait a minute,
I
who
love
did they
the
vote for?
redundancy of that sentence. It's kill them dead as opposed
Yeah.
to kill them. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
kill
that's
them
a
dead.
good question.
Whose character?
Can
and
we
the
talk
role he
about
played in the movie? Oh, yeah. Good.
The homeless character and the role he played in moving the story forward. He's an ally, and there are people who don't trust him because he's homeless. There's a beat where
class thing.
like every time he shows up and says, "Wait, you guys are escaping, let me come with you," they always hesitate a tiny bit.
I thought he
does-
was bit. Is kind of where I was like,
Right.
what's going on? Because he was acting so strange at the beginning. I didn't get that. That's what
I
was
just
going
think
on.
he was psychologically damaged.
He was freaked out.
That makes sense.
There's a prequel. The animated movie is basically a prequel, and it's about the zombie apocalypse kicking off at that train station that they leave from at the beginning of this movie, and it's from the perspective mostly of like homeless people because nobody believes them when they're saying, "Hey, there's something wrong with my friend." But yeah, I mean, he's an obstacle at one point. He can't get down from the baggage shelf and he steps on a soda can, alerts all the
Right.
zombies. He's also a help. He holds up. I mean, like even in his final moments, he holds off zombies so that Suan and Sungkwan can escape from beneath the train, and then the train collapses on him. Like he is a hindrance and a help. And the fact that he is homeless just affects how people react to him.
What an
But he does
epitaph.
create
A
obstacles.
hindrance and a help.
You know,
But
it
that's
just
the function
occurred-
he plays.
Yeah, I
So,
want that
is
on
there
my
a single
gravestone.
zombie that dies in this whole? Like, do they ever take out a single zombie?
I don't think they do. Like at the end, they find like the barricade that has like dead zombies on it, and you do have the soldiers who are aiming with the gun, which presumably that would do something. But no, our characters. It's like the movie Alien. Nobody in the movie Alien has a gun. They can't really fight it, and they can only just sort of run from it.
I love that movie.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's a great movie. Watch it over and over again. Yeah.
Let's see.
What else we got?
Man, oh man. I mean, everyone's just kind of talking about zombies and stuff like that, not necessarily questions
There's
directly.
a question from Dream Yogi about, has anyone seen The Serpent and the Rainbow or I Walked with a Zombie? So before Night of the Living Dead, zombie meant something.
Oh, we're losing you, Avi.
We're losing you, Avi.
I'll wait until I finish. Okay, so before Night of the Living Dead, zombies meant something different. They kind of came from Haitian folklore and were more about kind of mind-controlled slaves, potentially undead mind-controlled slaves, and it's sort of the fear of being controlled and subservient. And when George Romero created Night of the Living Dead, he never calls them zombies, but that's sort of the name that stuck to them, and that kind of redefined what the word meant. But Serpent and the Rainbow is a fantastic movie if you want to see a movie about zombie in the sort of original meaning of the term.
You know what?
Wow.
Okay. Something that is starting to drive me nuts is how many movies will say like, "This isn't a movie. This is real life." About like getting attacked by zombies or something, and it's happening so much that that's becoming like the thing. I need a movie to be like, "This isn't a movie," where they say this isn't a movie. Like, this is real life.
I don't know. Babe and Babe Pig in the City is about as real as you can get.
Good point.
I'll say-
How did you pull that one out? I mean, talk about a man. Where did he go?
So like Snowpiercer. Oh, yeah,
I mean, it's accurate, but
class on a
Jesus.
train.
Snowpiercer. I thought about Snowpiercer a lot. Well, maybe at the train, I guess. Yeah.
It's a Korean movie set on a train about class difference.
Snowpiercer's so good.
Yeah, it is.
Again,
and by
talking
the
about
way,
structure and obstacles. I mean, it's just
100%.
clean.
We should do that. We should do that sometime.
I love that
I
film.
want to kind of like take a step back for a second and say, talking about the zombie movies that sort of refer to themselves as movies or not movies. It's such a known cultural thing. When they made the Walking Dead TV show, which they knew would go on forever, they needed to make a concrete decision: have the characters in this show seen a zombie movie? And they decided no. So in this series, which has run for 10 years now, it's very important that nobody calls them zombies and nobody makes references to movies, because that would pull you out of it. And it's like, what a coincidence. The exact rules that were invented in these movies are happening to the entire world. Like, it's so specific.
Yeah, I guess because like, and then in this one, what I got from the subtitles was that people were tweeting or whatever about the fact, like calling them zombies. So yeah, and I guess it's a choice you make. Do you call them zombies or do you call them like walkers or whatever?
I say own it. Why not? Yep. Just own it. Just call it what it is. But like sometimes you'll have a movie that's where characters will have seen a zombie movie or a vampire movie or a werewolf movie, and then encounter one of those things, and the rules are different. And it's important that those movies exist in that world so that they can then say, we thought that with a zombie you shoot it in the head and it dies, but actually it turns out that doesn't work. Like in order for the contrast, like the movie Return of the Living Dead from the 80s, which was made by George Romero's partner on Night of the Living Dead, and then he sort of spun off his own direction, is sort of like a satire. And it has characters who have seen Night of the Living Dead. And it's like, did you know that movie was based on a true incident that the government covered up? And then they find a zombie and they try to apply the rules of zombies to it, and it doesn't really fit exactly. And they realize that their strategy has to change. Look, I can go on and probably will.
This sort of brings me back to this thought I had when I was watching the movies. Like, a train is such a good place to set a movie, because you can't like drive anywhere. You're isolated.
Or a plane, like snakes
point
on
A
a
to
plane.
point B. Snakes on a plane is a great example. So you have to think, what other movies can you put on a train? Can you put Dracula on a train? How would that work?
Yeah, some people have.
What is that one about
you're absolutely right. It's a great
murder? Something on the Orient Express, isn't that a movie?
Murder on the Orient
Express.
I mean, wait. That's an Agatha Christie novel, classic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You should watch it. It's fantastic.
It's absolutely brilliant.
I knew it was good. I knew enough to know that it's apparently good.
I'm going to spoil it for you after the broadcast because it's so good. It's such a good. I mean, Agatha Christie. You guys know how much.
Point, Adam. That to your point, that film, that novel, it works because they've isolated themselves on a train, and
I have complicated feelings about this.
So Abdullah says,
a killer. Yeah.
So Abdullah says, would you agree that the horror genre and writing an original / fresh piece of horror is the most effective way for a screenwriter to break into the biz?
I have a complex feeling about it. The answer is yes, if you're making it yourself.
Yeah.
If you can make the movie on a budget, and it's decent, it will find an audience, and that's helpful. But it's not necessarily super marketable, in part because
we lost you, Avi.
The economics of I'm back. The economics of horror movie are really awkward, where currently you either make them for $5 million and over, in which case it has to be really palatable to a lot of people, and then you can't get too weird with it, or $250,000 and under, at which point, it's going to be... So, like, it's difficult from a screenwriting perspective. It is good from a filmmaker perspective, because once those movies exist, there's an audience.
It's really just I think the advantage... Oh, go ahead, John.
No, you go.
I was just saying, if you're just a screenwriter, then I don't know that it helps much, except for the fact, unless it's a low budget. I think it's the idea is that a lot of horror films, there's a lot of horror films that have been done on a low budget, and that's kind of the advantage. But it's not necessarily the fact that it's horror, I don't think, that makes it advantageous.
It will always have an audience. It will never, unless it's a massive studio movie or a surprise indie that takes the world by storm, there's going to be a sort of a limit to how well it'll do financially. So that's why horror really thrives in the indie world.
Yeah, and that's right. Yeah, so back to the question, is it the quickest route for a writer to become viable or make a name? It's such a limited world that the manager / agent / producer who gets that script, they're very limited to the number of Blumhouse. I mean, where can you sell it? So you can sell it, yes, a few places, but but it's very limited.
Yeah.
World that you can sell it to.
Horror has a very dedicated audience, and but it is not mainstream per se. Like, you can make a mainstream horror movie that is more conventional, but a horror movie is less likely to connect with wide audiences than, say, an action movie or even like a science fiction movie. Because not everybody enjoys being scared or unpleasant feelings, so it really kind of depends on what you're going for. If, like, Warner Brothers can make It chapters 1 and 2 because the Stephen King book is well known, and they can throw millions and millions of dollars at the marketing, and then people will turn out to see it. But then they have to kind of be a certain kind of horror. You can't really get too weird with it or too unnerving with it. You kind of have to have fun horror, which is sort of like the roller coaster. You're here for the thrilling moments that happen, as opposed to the horror that really just kind of gets under your skin and stays there.
I feel like if you want to write horror, then write horror, but don't write horror because you think it'll be easier to get into.
You're
100%.
Alexie,
And by the way,
100%, you took the words right out of my mouth, because if this is your genre, if this is what you love, write it. But if you're Nora Ephron and you love rom-com, write what you love, write what you watch, write what inspires you. But don't write thinking I'm writing this genre because I can sell it and it'll or because it'll get my career launched. That's a kind of the road to nowhere, because you won't do it well. And there are people out there like Avi who absolutely love horror, who will always do it better because they love the world.
And by the way, if you write a horror movie just because you think it'll make money, not because you love it, horror fans will notice. We notice it all the time. It's like, this was not done sincerely. This was done cynically, and it never connects.
So we're getting a couple questions like this, which is, what about Get Out or Parasite? And I think those aren't like straight horror, right?
Well, Get Out,
like thrillery.
Get Out is horror, and Blumhouse basically told Peele, like, after he got rejected everywhere else, we will make this movie if you can make it below $5 million budget. It is a cheap
By the way,
movie.
that's always their paradigm. They won't spend more than $5 million.
And there's a reason for that, because they specialize in horror. And
they shoot in 18 days.
Yeah, so Get Out is it's a low budget movie. It is not a blockbuster. It was very successful once it hit, but it wasn't because everybody assumed that it would. It just did eventually. Parasite is Bong Joon-ho, renowned Korean director, doing what he wants.
Yeah, and he can do whatever he wants. But the other thing with Get Out is that it's brilliantly executed. Yeah. I mean, it's always going to come down to the execution of the script. How well did you do, whatever the genre? If you, I'm going to say the obvious, but if you do a great job with your action adventure script, there's a buyer. They're looking for great scripts. They're not looking for mediocre scripts. I know that's too obvious, but yeah.
But it's true. And by the way,
and it wasn't just horror, right? Because
the other thing, can I just say, by the way, some of you you're all interested in screenwriting, but some of you might. This happens a lot at NYU. Students come in, and every freshman year, everybody who wants to be a writer, director, everybody's hand goes up. That's because they don't really know what producers do. And on that note, so if you're a producer and you've got a great idea, or you've read a book that might lend itself to a great horror film, then you can go to Avi. Then you can go to somebody and say, hey, let's build this. You could come to the four of us and say, I've got a great noir horror film, and we would write it, for a lot of money. But so that's what producers do. They come up with ideas. They're always looking for ideas, and they move around genre to genre. And that's, by the way, a very fun and profitable world to live in. Coming up with ideas or hearing ideas and saying, yes, you should run with that. We should develop this script. Let's develop it. And then I know where to take it so we can set it up.
And by the way, Blumhouse, their model of making $5 million or below movies, unless it's like popular sequels, they do that in part because only one of them really needs to be successful to pay for the rest. And then if one of them doesn't really work out, like if it comes out kind of poorly, they bury it. They'll dump it on Netflix without a poster or a trailer, and nobody will know. And they can do that just because the financials work out. It's a numbers game in a sense for them, and that's their MO. And so there are companies that do that are sort of looking for the super cheap stuff because they can afford it. And then there are people who, are really picky with what like genre movies they take on, because like, I'm going to produce this genre movie. How do I know that it will be successful? The answer is you don't know. So you better take on the ones that really connect with you personally.
Well, and your point's well taken. And that's why Blumhouse, that's why they play a numbers game. I think I told you guys that not this year, but generally I take our finalists from the first round of film festival at NYU. I take them to LA for a week. And every other year, every 2 years, we go to Blumhouse, and they're very generous, and they meet with us and they talk to us about how they make their films, and they've got a design, how much money they'll spend, not a penny more, how many days they'll shoot, not a day more, and by doing that, they can't get hurt. And obviously, right, sometimes the films don't work. They know how to dump them. But the other thing that they do is they get really good directors, because they say, we're not going to tie you up for 65 days or 120 days. We're going to tie you up for 18 days. That's how long you have to make this film. You make it, then you go back over to Universal and you make your next big feature, whatever you want to do. But that they've got it, and they've been very generous. They're really nice people, but they have a business plan, and they stick to it, and they never break it, and it's paid off for them.
Yeah.
Let's look at this for a second. Christopher said Diablo Cody did Juno, then Jennifer's Body. I always thought that was interesting. Obviously, Jennifer's Body isn't straight horror.
Yes, it is. It's horror. It's quirky. It's funny. It has things to say, but it's horror.
But so I was thinking about that because it's like talking about, doing different genres. And I know that that's something that we talk about sometimes. Like if you write in one genre, are you stuck in that genre? And I just kind of wanted to open that up for a second.
Jennifer's Body. Jennifer's Body. What a mismarketed movie. And what a misunderstood movie when it came out. Because that is a movie for women, and it was marketed as a movie for leering men. And it flopped as a result. And the critics were like, what the hell? I don't get it. And it's because they didn't understand who their audience was going in. It's, Megan Fox as a succubus, essentially. And they try to sell it on her hotness as opposed to on the more feminist messages that are sort of throughout it. And it's sort of being reappraised now.
Huh. I was listening to the soundtrack.
Back to Alexie's point about and we do talk about this a lot, about getting into a niche and how to move around. Diablo Cody, and she was such a star coming off of that first film that basically every studio said, what do you want to make? So she broke the rules when she went away and did Jennifer's Body. When she moved tone, sensibility, and genre, it was because she became a superstar overnight, and people were just dying to get into business with her. So I'm sure what they said was, what do you want to write?
Well, there's probably some sort of through line, right?
But that's an anomaly.
But you know who directed
it? You don't think there's any through line there? Like that there's something...
I didn't see Jennifer's Body. I didn't see Jennifer's Body, so I don't know.
It's Karen Kusama. Karen Kusama directed it.
Just like I can imagine... No. Oh, go ahead, Adam.
We get this question all the time, like, oh, how did so-and-so make this career decision? And it's just exactly what John said. If you've made a lot of money for somebody, people are going to be like, oh, wow, you could make a lot of money for me too. Also, I mean, it's that simple, Yeah. And also, with Jordan Peele getting his first movie, with Greta Gerwig getting her first movie, these aren't just anybody off the street. Like, these are really successful, well-connected people who are getting the opportunity after a decade of work to make a movie with resources. You are never going to be a first-time director who has not already made money for somebody get a big budget to be like, follow your vision. That's never going to happen unless you've come up with, do you have $250,000 sitting in your bank account? Then you can do that. And, but you know, so basically that's why so many trust fund kids make low budget horror films, is because, you know, they do the math. And
by the way, bad low budget.
Bad. And every now and again, one of them is good. But
there's a reason, Adam. Go ahead.
Sorry, but the numbers play out sort of like, okay, this is the only genre that if I can make a halfway decent thing, I don't need a movie star to sell it, because it's the only audience that seeks out obscurity.
There's a quote. Matt Zoller cites, a film critic, had this great quote, which is, "Horror is the only genre where you can expect art every time," because even if it's a bad film, there's going to be work put into the aesthetics of it, and that's part of what sells it.
Yeah, but Adam, yes, absolutely right. You know, I'll say something, often a slightly different tangent, but you're right. These people have done, Greta Gerwig, these people have done, they put in the hours. And by the way, you know, one of the things that I love about this Friday afternoon coffee class is my gut is that most of you are writing and thinking about movies and analyzing movies. This is the work. This is it. This is the work. And hopefully you're all writing. And then after a few years, you've got a couple scripts and they've gotten better and better and better. And as Adam was saying, you know, and you've sold one and maybe one is hit. Or by the way, even if your movie, if you've sold a script that was a really solid script, they'll come to you and say, what do you want to do? So you don't necessarily even have to get that movie made. If you've written a great script, studios, networks, producers will come to you and say, what's your idea? Just tell us your idea, because we know you can put it on the page. And that will accelerate a career like nobody's business. So, and again, a little bit off of what Adam was saying about that person who has a trust fund and they make their film,
unspooled.
And I was being a little snide, but I'll continue because that's kind of where I live. And then that film sucks. It's because they haven't put in the years. So just because you can write a check to make a movie doesn't mean you know how to make a movie.
I will always point to unspooled.
Sorry. What?
Yeah. I will always point to unspooled.
Yeah.
What a disaster.
Basically, horror, is it a good way to break in? If you can make it yourself and you know what you're doing and you care.
It's like if you do it
and you have enough resources to get across the finish line of what you want to do. You know, because
something you can do, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
If it's good.
But there's a reason.
Also, if you want to be,
there's a lot to be said for paying your dues. There's a lot to be said for doing the work and writing a first script and second script, and all of you, the three of you, have written several scripts by now. And you know, think back to your first script.
Yeah, you know, when I went to Austin, the Austin Film Festival, there was like when I went to Austin, there was a few finalists. And I was talking to one of them just like in the back, like before we knew who the winner was going to be for the overall like Austin screenplay thing. And she was a teacher who doesn't do this professionally, but she was like, yeah, this is my 11th feature. She won. That was finally her thing. But it was not like, oh, you know, this person just, you know, this teacher just like randomly did one and then here she goes. It was her 11th feature and that she had written. And then something finally gave. But she had been like submitting stuff all the time. And I mean, I don't know what she's doing now, but that was something that stuck with me. I was like, holy crap, 11.
That just goes back to like craft, thoughtfulness, expanding your ability to make sort of those connective ideas. Like the ability to have good ideas is not something that any beginner has, in my opinion. Like the really great ideas are the ones that come from craft. They're mid-process. It comes from, wow, I've done this 4 times and I'm going to surprise myself. You know, like you can't write a great screenplay your first go around unless you've already been a writer who's been thinking about this for a long period of time. Like I think Tolkien is a great example. He had been, yeah, I'm going to bring it back. Like people bring up like, oh, wow, why does all fantasy kind of suck, the world building? It's because it's a bunch of people being like, oh, I'm going to build a world. And they spend a month outlining a fantasy world. It's never going to be as rich or good as Lord of the Rings because Tolkien spent literally his entire life writing this fictional world and the languages for the world and thinking about the agricultural, like, economic impact of Hobbiton and the history of the pipeweed that they grew in the different, like, prefectures and the families that came about. Like, that's just the stuff that adds to the verisimilitude of what that is. Now, that's just fantasy, and fantasy's better when it has rules and stuff like that. But I think that's true in anything. The more time and the more thought you put into something, the better it's going to be, no matter what it is.
And
so 11 scripts.
And Adam. What took you long
enough, Adam, to bring up Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to quickly say, kind of on the back of that, bringing back to Train to Busan, there's a very elaborate world of what the rules are. Beyond the zombies, there's the train, there's the stations, there's the way the military works, all of it from real life. But it's not just a backdrop; it's the story. These things turn into the story. The fact that those baggage shelves exist becomes story. So you're building fantasy, you're creating this world. Part of the question that you should also have in mind when you're doing these things is like, are you actually going to use this?
One of the things, yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that excites me about this coffee class is that I get the sense, I hope I'm right, that everybody in here is starting, it maybe came with it, but it's certainly enhanced, I hope, to really respect the craft. I mean, it's a fantastic storytelling. It's gone on for the beginning of time, and we tell stories, and that's how. When I won't even get started on why we tell stories. But what I hear in here when I see the questions and the comments is that people are going, I respect it, and sometimes. And they're young, so I get it, but sometimes freshmen, who like, my movie should get made. Okay, what's the inciting incident? By the way, I'm just curious. Yeah, I don't have one of those. I don't do that. Okay, good. So now
I have a question, John. Has anyone actually said to you that they don't believe in an inciting incident?
Oh yeah,
like specifically.
Oh yeah.
That blows my mind a little bit because, like,
no, Avi, you've had them in your class, right?
Huh? What? No, I mean, Adam.
Not that.
The whole thing. So I'm going to tell. Before we go, Alexie, you're going to maybe love it, maybe hate it. Can I do an anecdote that go out, because I think it's important. I think it's really important. So I had a young man who wrote. This just happened recently. Wrote a fantastic script. Should I tell? Well, too late now. So he wrote this fantastic script. It's a really good script. And it's as far as I know, it's his first script. Now, I know he's written others or played with others or started other scripts, but he got this one. Nailed it. And so I said to him, I can go out now to an agent or manager and we can get you going. We can get this going. I said, but before I do, and thank God I said this. I said to him, by the way, I said, you don't expect to direct this, right? And he said, oh no, I have to direct it, 100%. So I said, okay, let me just, what have you directed? Well, I kind of did this 10 minutes short. So I said, arguably, the script that we have here that you wrote is a $5 to $10 million movie. When it's lean and mean, it probably is a more like $15 to $20 million movie. So I can't go out can't call a manager or an agent and say, please read this script because I think this is somebody you should represent. If in fact you're going to hamstring the project by saying I must direct. So I said, I want you to think about it. Call me back tomorrow. So the young man called me back the next day and he said, no, I can do a great job directing it. He said, I've even got it cast. I didn't even ask him what that meant. But, and I said, okay, I'm just going to be blunt with you. I'm not going to go out. I can't put myself in that kind of jeopardy because I know, you know, so I won't go out. If you, I respect you doing this, if that's what you're, and he said, well, nope, not going to go out. I won't, I must direct it. So, you know, I guess that takes me back to understanding the business, being respectful of the business, understanding that if you've never directed anything, nobody's going to give you $10 million to make your movie. As one of you said, yeah, if you've got 10 million, you can write your own check. That's fine. But, you know, I hope a lot of what we're doing here is not only understanding the craft, but understanding the business of the business. And that once you've done the work and you've got that script, how to negotiate and move forward with your careers. I hope that wasn't off on a tangent that was unrelatable, but it just happened recently. It was really sad. It's sad to see somebody who was on the cusp of boom, having an.
But John, hey, who knows? Maybe you're the asshole in his story, and he's right. And he's going to find somebody to give him the money, and it's going to be this huge success. And way in the future, he's going to be like, "Yeah, John Warren, he was one of those assholes who was wrong. Maybe you're wrong, and he's the next whoever." You know?
You want to hear my hot take? My hot take on this story.
What?
You might want to hear my hot take on this story.
Yeah.
I think okay.
Oh no.
Part one. I think it's okay to have the script that you are desperate to direct. Yeah. Part two, you better have other scripts that you're writing and that you have.
Baby, yeah. So far, Avi, to answer your question, he has one script.
Okay, because I have scripts that I would love that I feel compelled to direct, but I'm not just sitting on that and not writing the next thing. Like there's always a next thing. The questions that I imagine are coming in, or maybe are other people's, is that here's the scenario. Here, you sell this script, you sell script A. And then you're working with this studio or network, and they see that you're not only but you're really good, and you're reasonable, and you're responsible, and you've got another idea, or they pitched you an idea, and you've written a second script. And then things are starting, and then they go, by the way, you know, you're doing the script so great, like Tony Gilroy. And then they go, hey, you know what? You should direct. But it's because they've gotten to know you. Right.
A low budget film, $10 million is still a lot of money. And that's a low budget film. So to get somebody to say, here's the check for $10 million, we'll see you in 28 days. I hope you make a good movie.
By the way,
well, John, that reminds
in the horror world, low budget is $250,000.
So, John, that reminds me of the inverse. You told a story that was kind of the inverse of that, which was this kid was really mature, and you were like, "You don't have to direct it, do you?" And he was basically like, "I don't know enough yet." Is that no?
Cosmo.
You told some story.
Cosmo.
Was it Cosmo? He was like, "I don't know enough yet."
It's Cosmo. No, Cosmo
I didn't know that. You never told me that was Cosmo. We need to get Cosmo.
Cosmo is the one that I called him. And I sent it out. I didn't ask him. I sent it out. The manager called me and said, this script is amazing. We're ready to go. And he said, John, I've got one question for you. Is this kid going to tell me he has to direct it? I said, don't move. I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I called Cosmo. I said, I got one question for you. Do you have to direct this film? He said, absolutely not, because Cosmo got it. And I said, hang on. Boom. Called the manager. I said, what's his name? Doesn't matter. Anyway, I called the manager and I said, Jacob. And I said, Jacob, the kid doesn't have, he's not going to ask, he's not going to demand direct it. He just wants to get going. He says, we'll sign him today. We're ready to go. And they signed him and off and running. And he's working now. He's been working nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that the story you were talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Cosmo.
Yeah. And
valedictorian. Huh?
Yeah. Cosmo. Yeah, we should bring Cosmo on here one day. He's
He's
very
Big
nice.
Cosmo, and he's great, and he has a sorry.
He can write.
So someone said real quick, and then we have to announce next week's thing. Would it have worked if he had agreed to be a direct or an overseer instead of a director? No. Like
No.
you can't. You might have like sometimes I think writers get like a symbolic producer credit for some things, right?
Not on your first,
but not like you're not actually going to be able to go in there and say yes or no unless you're J.K. Rowling, right? Like because she got to like have yeses or nos on some things, but like
it's all about
but
leverage.
she's J.K. Rowling.
exactly that's what
It's
I
all about
mean.
leverage.
Like that was a
It's all about
weird
leverage.
situation.
Right. The main thing as a writer is that you want to be a solution and not a problem.
Yes.
And if they have,
wait, let me write that down. That's
if they have a problem that you can help with, then they'll come to you and they'll ask. But the last thing you want to do is add to their list of things to worry about by also saying, and also I want to approve of everything that you do.
God.
You know,
That's
can't,
like-
Can you
yeah.
imagine?
I feel like that's worse than demanding to be the director. Like if you're like, no, but I get the final say and everything.
Dan
Then it's
O'Bannon.
like then it's like you do the work and I get to bless it if I so choose.
that you can do that if you're a producer. But
Yeah.
Dan O'Bannon, who co-wrote the original Alien, when it sold to Fox and got rewritten and Ridley Scott was assigned to it, Dan O'Bannon was on set, and they were not making the movie the way that he wanted it to be made. It was a slower paced thing than he pictured it. He pictured it as a sort of a Roger Corman sci-fi, you know, more of like a slasher kind of a thing. And here they're shooting it this ponderous, slow, dramatic. And he was vocal on set, like, "No, you're doing it too slow. You got to speed it up. Here's how you should do it." And
Oh my God.
and they kicked him off the set. They banned him. They banned him from the set. And like he was really upset about it. Eventually, he said to Ridley Scott, like, "Hey, you're about to do this chest burster scene. Can I just make a suggestion? Just one suggestion."
Oh
Ridley Scott,
my
like,
God.
And Ridley Scott's like, "Okay, you can make one suggestion, but you can't be on set." And basically, Dan O'Bannon says, "I need you to watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You're going to hate it, but that's what you have to do with that scene." And Ridley Scott's like, "Okay, got it." And then that was it. And then for the rest of production, Dan O'Bannon was just kind of stewing, assuming that they ruined his movie. And then it was a huge hit, but he had been sort of banished from it.
Man.
Yeah, that'll get you kicked off the set, in a heartbeat.
So let's go ahead
What's our
since
film?
we're at the end. Our next film, John, is the one that one of yours that we were gonna do before, but we filled in the place with a pitch week. It is The Graduate.
Oh, The Graduate.
Yeah. Classic.
Classic.
Yes.
Love this film. Yeah.
Are
great. Okay.
there zombies?
In a way.
In your version.
In a way.
Yeah.
The Graduate.
Love this film. Yeah.
Simon
Well,
and
good.
Garfunkel.
You get to break
Simon
it, John.
Great soundtrack. I can. I'll. And by the way, it messes around with structure a little bit. So I'll talk about that. Buck Henry just passed away last year. Buck Henry was the writer.
Yeah. So do we want to do one last question before we close out? We have a good one from Avi's brother.
Oh.
How close of a partnership do you have between the writer and the director generally?
It's a good question. If
John.
you're a smart writer, you want a great relationship. So those stories that we were telling about, Dan Gannon saying, this is the way you should shoot it. That's not where you go. But by the way, if you're a good writer and the director, you know how to work with the director and interact with the work, and you're respectful and you know your boundaries. I mean, my God, because then a director will come to you and say, "Hey, it's a year later. I'm getting ready to go into pre-production of this film. Can you take a pass? Can you look at this again? Can you look at this script of mine?" And he tells the studio, hire Adam to do a polish because I trust him and I know that he listens to me. I know I can interact with him. I know I can work with him. That's where you want to be. And if you can get that kind of relationship, it's like Jim Taylor with Alexander Payne. Alexander Payne always goes to Jim Taylor. that there are these relationships. So you absolutely want a relationship with directors or a director. I mean, it's, you know, by the way, the business, the movie business, TV business is a collaboration. It's always a collaboration, and playing well with others is a piece that I'm always surprised people don't always understand. And those relationships can go on for a long time if you know how to handle yourself.
Awesome.
Solid. Can I make a parting thought about horror, since there were questions about what you need to tell a good horror story, and since we're talking about Train to Busan,
but I just want to say,
work.
Adam, this doesn't mean that we can open it up to, you know what, you know.
Oh no, yeah, no, we won't speak about it. No.
I just want to wrap up Train to Busan week with this thought, where there's this great paraphrase from John Carpenter, who's a brilliant horror film director, who says that there's essentially two horror stories. You know, you have people gathering at the campfire and late at night, and the shaman is telling a story, and he points to the woods and he says, "The monsters are out there. Beware those woods. The monsters are out there, and sometimes they will come, and you have to be prepared." And that's one story. The other story, they're sitting around the campfire. Shaman points at himself and says, "The monsters are in here. You are capable of becoming a monster, and you have to be vigilant of that." And it's something that you should always be thinking about when you're writing a horror story, of which story are you telling? And there's a reason why the latter connects more with audiences, and why the best zombie movies are the ones that lean more towards the latter than the former. Why it's a lot less about the thing on the outside you should fear, and more about the ways that you can become awful. So just a thought, when you're coming up with your horror story, figure out which one of the two you're telling.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, thanks. So that wraps up this week's coffee class on Train to Busan. And if you want to get the scripts for coffee class ahead of time, we email them out. You can go ahead and sign up for the email list at the link in the description, and you don't get anything else from us. It's just coffee class scripts and links to where it's streaming. And also, if you enjoyed the conversation, you want to continue it, there's also a link to our Discord in the description. So me, Adam, and Avi are always hanging out there. John might hang out there eventually, possibly.
Find his way in.
He can find his way in. But yeah, it's just a really positive place to talk about film and stuff. And we hope to see you there and in coffee class next week when we do The Graduate.
Watch out for those zombies.
Yeah. Watch out.
All right, guys.